Hello, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Hope you have gone through the part one of Weblogic interview questions and answers. And as I said in part one, so I will move slowly from basic questions toward the advanced questions. Okay, so now we will start in part two from wherever we left on the part one. Now, the next question would be, what are the different modes of a domain? So that means whenever we create a domain, okay, you have two options to create the domain. One is you can create the domain in production mode, and second, you can create in a development mode. So development mode is specifically when where you do the development and testing of your applications. That means all non-prod environments you can configure in development mode. As I said, it could be a quality, it could be a testing, it could be a development. Okay, all those environment can be configured in development mode. And apart from that one, when we go in a live environment, live in a live instances, so the all live instances or the current production environments are configured in production domain. Okay, so make sure when you are creating a domain, when you are doing it for even for testing purpose in your local machine or laptop, you can create in development mode. But if you wanted to test some features of the production mode as well, then you can configure it in production mode as well. But when we go for a live environment, then we have to select the production for the environment. Okay, and the domain mode determines default settings regarding security and logging. So that means when you enable the production mode, yeah, when we enable the development mode, there are certain features specific to the mode that is get enabled. Okay, now when we talk about what is the difference between development and production mode, so some of the important differences are, the first is development mode enable the auto deployment of applications. So as I said, we create the development mode domain for when where we do the development or testing of our application. So when we are doing a development of applications, then a lot of times we have to do the very frequent changes in the code. Okay, and it's unfeasible or it's not feasible. Like whenever you are doing a small change in your code, every time you are going to console, you are undeploying the application and redeploying the new applications. Okay, it's time consuming. So for that one, you have a flexibility, right? Where that means you, when you develop application, okay, after developing the application, you can place your application inside a auto deploy folder inside your domain. Okay, so when you create your domain in development mode, it create a folder with name auto deploy inside your domain. Okay, so whenever you want to auto deploy the application, just take application, change the code, and place it inside the auto deployment. So Weblogic will automatically take the file from the auto deploy folder and it will deploy the application for you. So every time you don't need to go for the again for undeployment and deployment of the application to save your time. But when you go for the production, you have to do this auto deployment mode is not enabled. Okay, and as I explained in the part one as well, when we are in a development mode, then it create a boot.properties file automatically for you. That means when you go to start your admin server after creating the domain, it will not prompt you for the username and password. But in production, you have to create boot.properties file manually. Otherwise, it will keep asking you to provide the username and password whenever you go to start your admin server. So once you will create your boot.properties file, okay, after that it will on the startup it will decrypt the username and password in that file, and after that it will not prompt you for the username and password again and again when you go to restart your admin server. The default capacity when we talk about the for JDBC connections pools, when we go to prior to 12c versions, it was 15 capacity was there for the connection pool in development mode, and in production mode it was 25. But now from 12c onward, either it is a development mode or it is a production mode, the default capacity for connection pool is 15. Now when we talk about the execute queues, okay, the number of threads in execute queues, so execute queues are, you can say, the self-tuned queues which accept the request for the execution which come to WebLogic server, right? So whenever any request going to a WebLogic server, it is accepted and placed in a execute queue. Okay, from there, WebLogic pick the request and assign a thread to your request, and then that request get executed. So that means a default execute queue is there which hold all the incoming requests. So the default number of threads in that execute queue in development mode is 15, and when we go to production, it is 25. But again, it is a self-tuned queue, okay, from the WebLogic side. So if the threads are required more than that, it will auto-tune the your execute queue threads. Okay, in development mode, change center is disabled. That means when you log into your console, then you get a button on the left side, right? For if you are going for editing, then click for editing and then release the configuration. That configuration you get when you configure your your mode, this domain in production mode. When you go for a development mode, this will be disabled automatically because it's not really necessary there to waste your time on this kind of stuff. Okay, and the last one, the important point is that when you restart your managed servers or your admin server in development mode, it rotate the existing log file and create a new file whenever you go for the rotation of your restarting of your admin server or managed servers. But in production environment, it is not the case. That means log file will not rotate on every restart. It will be based on the configurations that you have done on the logging screen from the admin console, or maybe from the scripting as well. Okay, so default when it is reached to the 500 kilobyte of size, then it will automatically rotate. Okay, now, how to enable disable production and development mode of a domain? For that one, you can go to domain and then click on configuration tab, then general tab, and then you will see a button for production mode. If you will click this one, then production mode will be enabled. If you will deselect this one, then it will be by default development mode. Okay, so many time when we go for a different kind of a testing in our local laptop or machines, okay, we have to switch between the modes, okay, to check the different kind of features. For that, this option is important. Or even sometimes if you forgot to enable production mode in your domain in on the environment that you have built for the production, then you can enable it from here. Now, what is a data source and what is a connection pool? So I had a lot of discussion regarding this one in detail in few of my videos that you can see in my channel. Okay, with respect to the data source, multi-data source, and active data source. Okay, but from an interval point of view, you can say that a data source is a pool of ready-to-use connections. Okay, and connection pool, again, it is a ready-to-use of database connections. So why I'm saying it is a ready-to-use is that whenever your application need a connection from the database, so one option is that every time the connection is coming from the application to your WebLogic server, okay, and then WebLogic server create a connection with the database, and then it share the data and get the data from the database, right? So every time a request is coming, then if it is creating a connection at that time from the database, that would be a performance impacting. Okay, your performance can degrade because every time your code is need to be initiated to create the connection from the database. So when we talk about the data source and connection pool, okay, so connection pool is inside the data source, right? So data source is a logical entity for your connection pool. So connection pool, when we create a connection pool and we define the initial capacity and maximum capacity for your connection pools. So meaning of that is the number of connections that we are defining in the initial capacity, that number count of a connection will be created at the startup of your WebLogic server. That means it will, when you starting your managed server where you have targeted your data source, okay, and the initial capacity that you have defined for your connection pool, that number of connections will be created at the startup. That means it is already established connection with the database. That means the connections are already established with the database and tested, and now they are placed in your connection pool, so that if application need a connection from the database, it will come to your data source, and connection pool will hand over the ready to use connection to your application, and your application don't need to create a dynamic connection pool or connection request at the time of when the request is hitting to your WebLogic server. So it increase the performance of your WebLogic server. Now, what is a node manager? So node manager is a very basic question, but it is very important to understand that node manager is an independent utility from the WebLogic server. Okay, it is shipped with WebLogic server. Okay, but it is completely an independent utility. And why I am saying it is an independent utility is because it has no impact on the WebLogic server, whether it is running or not, whether even when your server is running and then your node manager is goes down, or it doesn't have any impact on the applications. Okay, it only a utility that is used for the remotely control of your managed servers, and for certain features like you want to enable the auto restart of your server. If it get failed, then your node manager will enable the auto restart of your node managers. But again, I'm saying that it is an independent utility which is shipped with your WebLogic server for controlling of your managed servers. Okay, and is it really necessary to configure node manager for a domain? So okay, so this is again a very basic question when we are creating a domain. Okay, is it really necessary to have a node manager in the domain? So for that, two things are there. You can't say that it is really necessary, but there are different cases for that one. So if you are planning to start your managed servers using the script that is provided from the Oracle with the WebLogic server, which is start manage server, which is inside the bin folder. So if you're starting your managed servers with the help of scripts, then you really don't need a node manager to be configured, because when you are starting your managed server from the scripts, okay, then it directly connect with the admin server, and it really don't require to have a node manager configured. But if you want to configure, or you want a capability to start your managed servers from the admin console, then you need a node manager to be configured because when you initiate the command from the admin console, it first contact your node manager, and then your node manager start your manage servers. So straightforward answer is that it depends on the conditions. If you are starting your if you are starting your manage servers with the help of scripts, then you don't need to configure node manager. But if you want to start your manage servers from the admin console, then yes, you need to configure your node manager. And okay, and what is the impact in case of node manager goes down? So as I said, it is an independent utility which is shipped with the WebLogic server for remotely handling your managed servers. So there is no impact when your node manager goes down. The only thing is that the capability that has been enabled with the help of node manager, like in case of failure of your managed server, it automatically start your managed servers. So those capability will be disabled if in case your node manager is down. Okay, and what is the extension of log files created by node manager? This is again a very basic thing, and a lot of time the engineers do not have proper knowledge of this particular question. Okay, because when we if you have if you are starting your managed server with the help of node manager, and if you go to the log file of a managed server, right, inside the domain servers and the name of your server and the log folder for each and every node managed server, then there you will see two log files, right, with the name of your managed server name .log and the managed server .out. So .log is created by the managed server, and when you start your managed server with the help of node manager, it also create a log file that is and that is registered with the name managed server .out. So the extension of node manager log file is .out. Okay, and if you are seeing two log file inside your log folder, that means .out extension log file will be created by your node manager. Okay. And what is deployment? So deployment is a very basic stuff, right? We can say that deployment is a kind of activity that we do in the WebLogic server so that your applications can be accessible for the outer world, or your application should be available for the clients to process the request. Okay, because when you will deploy your application, only after that it is available for the clients to accept the request and to process the request. So deployment you can define as it is a process of making your application to be available for the outer world or for the clients to process the request. And what are different type of deployment files? So there are different type of deployment files in WebLogic server, but some of the main files are web files, which we deployed as a .war file, enterprise Java beans .jar files, enterprise applications as .ear files, and resource adapter .rar files. So most of the time you will see the war file, jar file, or EAR file in the deployment in most of the cases. So war file is a web application. That means if you are designing a web application, then you can deploy it on WebLogic server. And war file will include your static pages, HTML pages, text file, sometimes images as well. However, this is not really required to be on the WebLogic server, because you can deploy your static content on your web server if you have in front. Okay, or apart from that, servlets, JSP. So all the WAR file web application contents will be zipped inside a WAR files. Okay, and then it is deployed. When we talk about the enterprise Java beans, EJBs, okay, that is basically a reusable libraries. So we deploy the libraries which can be reusable across multiple applications in the form of jar format. It is called enterprise Java beans .jar files. And when we talk about enterprise application, so enterprise application with extension .er, it is a combination of var, jar, and EJBs. Okay, that means you have an enterprise file which will contain your web application as well. It will contain your business logic as well. It will contain your shareable libraries as well. Okay, so all these applications, all these code, you can in, uh, club in a single file that is called .ear file, that is an enterprise file, and .rar is a adapter for legacy applications. So adapter, what is the meaning of adapter? It is to create a certain kind of a connection with the different applications. Okay, if you want to connect your WebLogic server with the ERP systems, or maybe with some different cloud or some different other systems, or maybe for some legacy old systems. Okay, those were running in your organization since very long. So for that, rar is a resource adapter that make a connectivity between different applications. And how do we create deployment files? So for that one, you have an option that you can create with the jar utility. So this jar utility comes with the JDK. When you install your JDK, then inside the bin folder where you have a Java utility, right, to initiate your JVM, there you will see a jar .exe or jar.sh file as well, which we can use to create different kind of a EAR, var, or jar files. Okay, and syntax would be same as we use for the tar file. So you want to create a a var file, then you have to initiate the command cvf and then the name of your var file and the dot with the current folder. That means wherever you have that, it will zip all those folder files. So there is a specific format for each and every file that we will cover in our later sessions, like when we create a var file, or when we create a jar file or er file. So from there is a structure defined from the Java, how you will create a parent folder, what are the different folders need to be created inside each and every parent folder, and then each and every folder where you will place the class file, where you will place the web contents, where you will place the shareable libraries, where you will place the XML file. So there is a specific format for each and every archive file, var, jar, er, okay, that we will cover in the later sessions. And again, one more important question is about what are the different deployment mode for your WebLogic servers. Okay, so when we deploy our application, it has a certain kind of a default modes, and we have three modes for that one: stage mode, no stage mode, and external stage mode. So what is the difference between stage mode, no stage mode, and external stage mode is when we deploy our application. Okay, so from the admin console, we go to the admin console, we click on the servers, and then we click on the deployment tab, and inside the deployment tab we click on install. Then we install. After, we select a location of our code file wherever we have placed the code file, and then we pass some default parameters, and then we click on deploy, and after some time you will see the application is accessible, right? After that, when you go to the uh, to the domain and then servers folders, and inside server you will click on your manage server name, and then inside manage server name you go to your cache directories, okay, temp, stage, and then there's some other few more directories. Okay, then you will see that that file is copied there. The file which you have deployed from a single location, it is now copied in the every location, every staging folder of the manage server. So how it is happened? Because you have deployed the application from a single location when you deployed it from the console, but now it is on the every manage server staging directory, right? Because you have targeted your application to the cluster where you have a 2 or 3 or 4 managed servers. That means when you do the deployment from the console with the help of admin console, okay, the files, the code file gets copied to the staging directory of each and every managed server, whether it is on a single machine, whether it is on a different machines in a horizontal clustering, the files will get copied to each and every managed server's staging directory. So that means this is a staging mode, the default staging mode. Okay, staging mode. So what happens in staging mode is that when you do the deployment of your application, your deployed application, which your application that you're deploying, it is copied in the staging directory of each every managed server. That means each managed server will have the local copy of the code that you are going to be deployed. And this is the default mode for your managed server, and this is the preferred mode for the deployment. Okay. Now, second is no stage mode. So no stage is name is also clear. No stage. That means your application is not going to be staged in every managed server directory. That means the application will be accessible only from a single location. That means when you deploy an application from the admin console, the location that you are selecting, okay, the application will be accessible to all the managed servers from that particular location. That means that location will be referred by each and every managed server. WebLogic server will not copy that code to each and every managed server. Now the problem in that case is, okay, and the configuration, what kind of a configuration that you need in that case is, because their application will be accessible to all the servers from a single location, that you have to make sure that particular location where you have placed your application should be accessible by all the managed servers. If it is a single machine, then there would be not an issue, because your all the managed server would be on same machine and they can have access to the location which is on the same server or same machine. But if you have a horizontal clustering, that means you have a multiple machines, okay, in your cluster. So, and you have copied your application in the primary server where you have an admin server, then you are deploying from there in the no stage mode, okay. But that location would not be accessible for other servers because they would be on different machines. So in that case, whenever you're doing a no stage mode of deployment, make sure the application accessed from a shared location or NFS mount point, right? A shared directory which is configured as is shared across all of your machines wherever you have the horizontal clustering, so that you can copy your machine in the shared directory, and that shared directory will be accessible for each and every managed server. So when you deploy your application, select that particular shared directory, application file from the shared directory, and all the managed server will refer to that particular directory. And this is important in where certain cases, like where you have a very large code file, Okay, for basically very large var files. Okay, sometimes we have very big var files which has a lot of contents. Okay, and when you go for every time you go for a deployment from the console in stage mode, then it will going to take a hell of time because the size is very big, sometimes in very many GBs. Okay, so when you're going for a deployment of such large file, it's not feasible to deploy it from the WebLogic console. Okay, so the stage mode will not work perfectly in that case because it has to copy the file to the different managed servers on each and every servers, right, during the stage mode. So if you have GB of size of file and then you are doing a deployment, then this file has to be copied on each and every server. It is going to take a hell of time. So in that case, in such situations, you can opt for the no stage mode. Okay, and make sure that your application is accessible to each and every server from the stage shared directory. External stage directory is very less in use. Even I haven't saw any single cases of this one so far in my career. Okay, but external stage mode is similar to stage mode, but only difference is that in stage mode, your admin server copy your your files to each and every managed server. But in external stage mode, admin server doesn't copy your file to staging directories, but you have to manually copy the files to staging directories. Okay, so every time you have to make sure that you are copying the file to your staging directories during the deployment, and such kind of a deployment is used. Mode of deployment is used sometimes when you have a certain kind of a third-party organizations are in place or third-party tools are in place who are responsible for the changing of the code and placing in some locations. So that time, this kind of a staging, external stage mode can be used. And what is the default staging mode? So staging mode for managed server, the mode is stage mode. And when we talk about the admin server is no stage mode. And one of the basic question, how you can delete the cache in a Weblogic server. So for deleting a cache, you have to delete 3 folders, which will be inside your domain servers and the name of your server folder. And then inside that, you will see the some folders there, okay, with the name data and then security. And then apart from that, data and security, you will have temp, TMP, cache, and this cache is repeated again. Okay, this should not be cache. This should be named with a stage. Okay, I will correct it, but you can correct in your knowledge. Okay, the folders that you need to delete is temp, cache, and stage. Okay, I'm repeating again. This cache is a typo. Instead of cache, you can consider the name as stage. So you will have 3 folders that you need to delete when you are going to delete the cache. The folder with name temp, the folder with name cache, and the folder with name stage. Okay, but make sure when you are deleting your cache, okay, your servers are down. So if you are going for activity where you have to delete the cache, make sure to shut down your servers, delete all 3 folders with name temp, cache, and stage, and then restart your managed servers. So this is all for this video, and stay tuned for the next part of this video. Thank you very much.